Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bay Bolts channel for another edition of Quick Strikes. And unfortunately, we have to talk about a loss. They are few and far between. The Lightning lose this one by a final score of 4-3, dropping their record to a measly 24-7-2. My name is Michael Wax, joined as always with my co-host Jake Ricker. Jake, how are you doing tonight?
Well, Michael, you made me feel a little bit better as you reminded me of the Lightning's fantastic record right there. But this was a tough loss today, just because of the way they lost in this one, having tied the game up and then let up a goal in the last minute 20, I believe it was, which was extremely unfortunate. But you can't win them all. There's still some positives to take out of this game. There's a lot of negatives to talk about it as well, too. So can't wait to get into those and would love to hear everybody else's thoughts in the comments down below and what your guys' thoughts on these were. Always love to hear what you say. Any and all comments are always appreciated. We will try and get back to you and have a little conversation down in the comments below.
Exactly right. One thing that I want to get to before the game itself, one of the things that we noticed during warmups is that the Lightning actually played tonight's game with 17 skaters, with Eric Chernak and Ryan McDonough out of the lineup. You know, they already have on Andreas Borgman and Luke Shen coming in, but the addition of Luke Shen does give the Lightning a little bit of cap problems. And for some reason, they could not make an emergency exemption tonight, even though they were down a man. So they played with 17 people due to the amount of cap space. Definitely a weird scenario. It's happened in this season multiple times to a variety of different teams, but it is a very weird thing to see, especially if you're a Lightning fan.
Yeah, and shout out to Dave Randorf and both Eric as well for trying to explain the situation. I'll put both of their tweets on screen trying to explain it. So basically, what happened is because, as you mentioned, with the injuries and the cap situation the Lightning are in, they weren't able to call up a player. Now, there is a thing where you can have an emergency call up and you can still go over the cap if you need the players because you have players injured. But here's what I don't understand, to be quite honest with you. Apparently, in order to have an emergency call up, you have to play at least one game with 17 forwards. Or I just did what you did, Mike, a little bit earlier, even though we cut that out. 17 players, not 17 forwards. But so they have to play one game like that in order to do an emergency call up. Now, Michael, I don't know about you, but an emergency usually means that needs to be fixed now. This is an emergency. This is a problem now. When you call 911 for an emergency, they come help you now. So why you can't make an emergency call up right away is beyond me, but that's the way the rule book is right now. So the Lightning could not make an emergency call up and had to play with 17 players today. So, and you could tell this affected them as well, as they looked like a little bit step behind. They've been playing a lot of games as of late in a short span of time. I believe this was their 7th game in 11 days, if I'm not mistaken. So that was definitely a factor. I mean, obviously, you don't want to make any excuses anytime you lose a game because they ended up losing this one. But that was definitely an issue. And I really don't understand the rule there. But hopefully, now that they've done that, they can make that emergency call up if Chernak and some of the other guys are going to be out for an extended period of time.
Yeah, I think the big problem and the reason they couldn't use an emergency exemption tonight is because we didn't know if Eric Chernak was going to play until warmups. And you can't really expect somebody to get to the arena, get dressed, and get ready for the game within 30 minutes. That's just not reasonable. So this is probably one of those games or one of those situations where you have to play a game for it to actually show that you are in an emergency situation. But again, let's get to the positives of the game as we always do. And Jake, when I was looking at this game, I really debated between giving it to one particular player or the line he was playing on. The player is Yanni Gourde, but heck, why not give it to all members of his line? Yanni Gourde, Andre Palat, and a combination of Steven Stamkos and Matthew Joseph were by far the best Lightning lineup tonight in terms of their forward lines or their defensive pairs. Probably the best players on the ice for the Lightning tonight. Joseph using his speed and tenacity, Gourde always feisty, and Andre Palat, that perfect complementary piece to keep the whole thing going.
Yanni Gourde on a 5-game goal streak now. He is playing some of his best hockey, which is something you love to see. Hopefully, this can continue. He can go for 6 goals coming up here. Andre Palat, I thought, played a great game. We kind of mentioned a couple episodes ago that he'd been struggling. He played a really good game tonight. Had the game tying goal, we thought, in the third period, which is another great play by him as well. I know, already salt in the wound mentioning that again, but both Yanni Gourde and Andre Palat, I've thought both played very good games, which is good to see. I thought for the most part, a lot of guys had some pretty solid games overall. There were a couple over uh, big problems that ended up resurfacing and causing us to lose this game. And one of those, Michael, we've been talking about for a long time, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yes, Yanni Gourde, Andre Palat, Steven Stamkos, Joseph, that line in general did play really well, which is good to see. I thought even when Gourde was playing with Coleman and Goodrow to start that game, which I believe is when Gourde actually scored his goal, if I'm not mistaken, solid as well.
Yeah, it seems like Yanni Gord can plug and play with anybody as long as you're putting him at the center position. I think
True.
that's a very important key distinction. He's very much like Tyler Johnson, where if you put him at center, he's going to thrive. You put him at the wing, he's probably not going to. And that's just the way he's been playing for his entire career. Another positive, I know it's not going to seem like a positive because he did allow 4 goals, but we got to talk about Andre Vasilesky once again. I know his 12-game win streak got snapped, but what a phenomenal performance by Vasilevsky. 38 saves on 42 shots, getting shelled by tons of Dallas shots because the Lightning's defense was just fairly not good enough tonight in terms of allowing breakaways and odd man rushes. Vasilevsky was fantastic, and he definitely deserved to win. It was unfortunate that he did not get the opportunity to win, but he really gave the Lightning a chance. Probably would like to have that last goal back. You want to keep your team in the game when it's a minute and 30 seconds left and it's a tie game. But otherwise, a spectacular performance by Vasi.
He was great, and goals against doesn't always tell the whole story. Just like shots against also doesn't tell the whole story. Sometimes you'll see teams with just 3 shots on goal, but they have 3 goals. So that doesn't always tell the whole story. But Vasi was solid again tonight, and even though we're saying this, Michael, Vasi is going to be extremely frustrated with this loss, and his home team will. And Vasi is one of the best when it comes to rebounding from a loss. He has such good stats when he plays in games after losses. So expect him to have one of his career games probably when he plays in his next game. Could potentially be against Carolina, which is our next opponent up here on this short little road trip. But yeah, Vasi was good. Defense was not great tonight. It's funny, we saw the defense play some of their best hockey in the last game against Dallas. This time, to Dallas's credit, came back, figured things out, and got tons of shots on goal, which is a part of the reason why they were able to win that game. But that defense, Michael, definitely was an issue. I mean, especially on that last goal as well. Hines was just able to walk right through the middle of those 2 defenders and have that odd man rush. You've got to do a better job of trying to defend that there. Not a great game for the defense, but these games happen.
Yeah, and when the opponent does very well, you want to credit them, and credit is due to Rupe Hintz and Joe Pavelski. They had some fantastic games. Jason Robertson had a great game as well, a young Dallas left winger. He is probably one of the guys to look out for the next time that the Stars and Lightning play each other. But again, you need to make sure that you bottle them up defensively. And the Lightning didn't. They really struggled on the defensive side. I thought a couple of defenders had pretty good games. Sergachev had a good game. The Cal Foot, for the amount of minutes he played, had a pretty good game. But you look at someone like Andres Borgman, and I don't want to rag on Borgman too much because it was his second consecutive game with the Lightning, his third game overall. But that first goal, you have to know your surroundings. Miro Heiskanen is a defenseman. And I understand that he's got quick feet, but you can't let a defenseman get in on a breakaway. So Borgman's got to be aware of his surroundings. Sergachev had his guy, and unfortunately, Borgman didn't know what to do. And ultimately, that led to a breakaway goal. And then in the last goal, I understand that Ruda and Hedman were tired, but you have to move your feet. And I think that when they ultimately decided to hang back and not try to bring the play into the offensive zone, that's what really cost them in the end. So, not going to rag on too much on this defense. They're probably exhausted, like you mentioned, their seventh game in 11 nights, but it was just not that great of a defensive performance, especially allowing 21 shots or 22 shots, one of the two, in the second period and 42 overall.
Yeah, no, not a great performance from the defense, but you're right. You can't rag on them too much because again, they're also without Eric Cernak and Ryan McDonough, who are two huge parts of this defense. So you have to take that with a grain of salt as well. Michael, this is kind of a two-piece here too. Luke Shen was also not great. He's another one that fills in for our missing defenseman. He took a terrible penalty on a holding call as well, which leads me to the next point. Michael, this I don't know what else to say, but this has become a really big issue. It finally came back to, I really think, bite them here, and was a huge part of the reason they lost the game is the penalties. Lightning the Stars had 3 power plays on this one. Lightning had none in this game, but you can't blame the refs for these kinds of losses. I know with all the things going on with the refs right now, people are wondering where that even up call was, but that the Lightning have got to stop taking penalties. They're taking way too many silly penalties. One of them was a too many men on the ice as well. You just cannot take penalties and then expect to have your penalty kill it off every single time. Penalty kill has been really good at the start of the season. They've kind of dropped off a little bit as of late, but that's a major problem for the Lightning. Is my number one concern for this team. Despite how well they're playing, that's the one thing that they have not done well this entire season. It needs to be fixed. They cannot be taking as many penalties because if they do that in the playoffs consistently, they're going to lose some key games, and that could ultimately be the deciding factor when you're playing a 7-game series.
Yeah, and you look at the game overall. Number one, I'm very surprised that Dallas did not commit an entire infraction the entire game. Round of applause to the Dallas Stars. They didn't do anything wrong, so they got 0 penalties called against them. But you're absolutely right. We can't blame the refs for this loss. And another thing, the problem comes down to discipline. You have your seventh defenseman come into the game, or technically your eighth defenseman come into the game, and his job is to play very solid. Like, I'm not saying he's supposed to be great or he's supposed to be jumping up in the rush or anything like that, but he's supposed to play solid. Luke Shen had 7 penalty minutes tonight, and the Lightning were without Luke Shen and down to 5 defenders for almost a sixth of the game. You can't do that. I heard a lot of, uh, more specifically Brian Engblom, a lot of people on Twitter, but more specifically Brian Engblom during the game, saying that the Lightning were taking penalties because they were tired and they weren't moving your feet. You know what's going to make them more tired? Trying to kill off penalties. Like, this is a cycling problem where, oh, they're tired, so they're committing penalties, which makes them even more tired, which makes them commit even more penalties. This is the problem that the Lightning are currently dealing with. And this, we've been saying for a lot of these issues, it's only a 1-game problem. You shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. They'll fix this next game. This is a discipline issue that Coach Cooper and the rest of the coaching staff needs to look at, because it's not getting any better. And quite frankly, if they take another too many men on the ice call in the next couple of games, I'm going to be very angry.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's how it's been. That's been tough, but that's hopefully something they can fix very soon. Luckily for the Lightning, again, as I mentioned, everything else has been going right for them for this entire season. That it hasn't become a major issue. You really got to look for it, so to speak, to see that problem. But it's definitely an issue and still continues to be an issue. They've got to stop taking penalties. Listen, don't get me wrong either. Penalties are going to happen. You're going to get some calls that maybe aren't good calls, or just penalties you have to take when a guy's on a breakaway. You got to make a quick hook or a slash. But you can't be taking penalties like too many men on the ice. Those are silly penalties that can be easily avoided, and the Lightning have not been doing that. So an issue that I hope the Lightning can fix here moving forward. But, again, as we mentioned, this was a tough game. Guys were definitely tired, even though that's, you don't want to make that an excuse for why they lost this game. But, that was definitely a factor playing, again, as we mentioned, down a whole player, only 17 players on the ice. So just not an unfortunate game, I think, overall for the Lightning in that one. And finally losing to Dallas only for the first time so far this season. So that even though despite the loss, they've been playing really well against the Stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a ton to really complain about in their series against Dallas. This was just a game where I think the Lightning ran out of gas, and it didn't help that they played with one less player. I think that is ultimately what did them in. A lot of good things to take away from this game, including Yanni Gord being an absolute menace against the other team. But overall, it was a game where I think the Lightning are starting to feel the fatigue a little bit more. And the next time they can get even a 2 day break, they're going to take it, and they're going to take it in stride. But Jake, anything else good or bad from this game that you thought of?
Well, the last thing I say, the next time they get a 2 day break is we're going to be playing Carolina on the 27th, which is this Saturday. And then we have a 2 day break, and then we'll play Columbus again on Tuesday. So, the Lightning cannot wait for that 2 day break coming up here very soon. So hopefully that should be helpful. And Michael, here's the last thing I'll say, and I'll end it on this positive note. Do you know what it means now that our winning streak has ended and we lost this game?
No.
It means we get to start another streak getting going again right here. So a little bit looking at the bright side of things on that one to end this episode. But looking forward to the next game against Carolina. So that should be a really fun game. One of the top three teams in this division and one of the top teams in the league. So can't wait to see that one. And looking forward to it. If you guys have any questions, by the way, for future episodes like this, don't forget to leave those in the comments down below and follow us on Twitter so you can post those. We'd love to answer them in these recaps.
That is going to do it for us on this edition of Quick Strikes. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Ring that bell for notifications. Comment down below what you thought about this game, what you liked, what you didn't like, all that good stuff. We recently put out a trade video because Alex Volkov was traded to the Anaheim Ducks. Jake is probably going to put that in the top right corner as well as the description. So, guys, make sure to check out that video on our thoughts on both Alexander Volkov leaving town and Antoine Mondel coming into town for the Lightning. Also, we've got a new special episode coming out with our top 5 Lightning players of all time. Make sure that you ring that bell for notifications so you know when that video comes out. Make sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Bay_Bolts. We do the live game recaps on Twitter. Come say hi to us. If you have any questions, please let us know. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. For Jake Ricker, my name is Michael Wax. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, the Tampa Bay Lightning are still defending Stanley Cup champions.
Go Bolts.